Introduction to the Prophet Muhammad. There are no historic doubts about the existence of Muhammad. Throughout his active career, every detail of his life is known. Muhammad was born in Mecca on the 12th Rabi', the 20th of August, in 570 of the Common Era. His father, Abdullah, son of Abdul Muttalib, of the clan of Bani Hashim, of the tribe of Quraysh, died before his birth. According to the custom of the nobility of the Quraysh, the child, when only 8 days old, was handed to a Bedouin nurse called Allama from the tribe of Bani Sa'ad to be brought up by her in the healthy atmosphere of the desert. At the age of 5, Muhammad returned to the care of his mother, Amina, the daughter of Wahb, the chief of the clan of Bani Zuhra, but she died a year later. His grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, the chief of Bani Hashim and the leader of the Meccans, in whose loving care he was, died when he was 8, and Muhammad was brought up by his uncle Abu Talib, who was to prove his shield and protector. When some 30 years later, his preaching brought upon him the enmity of the Meccans. Abu Talib was a merchant of modest means, and when Muhammad grew up, he assisted his uncle in his business. At the age of 12, he accompanied his uncle in a merchant's caravan to Syria. To the young, vigorous, and fresh minds of Muhammad, who had no school learning, the glimpses into the contrasts and similarities of the beliefs, customs, and civilizations of diverse countries and peoples must have opened up glorious vistas and left lasting impressions. Later, Abu Talib's business began to dwindle, and Muhammad earned his living as a shepherd. Thoughtful by nature, this occupation gave him full scope to contemplate the universe and commune with the creation. Arabia at this time was in a state of religious chaos and political dissolution. The Arabs were steeped in ignorance and perpetually at war with one another. They were mostly nomadic except for those tribes living in the few cities scattered through the land, the holy city of Mecca being inhabited by the different clans of the tribe of Quraysh, apart from a few Jewish settlements. In the northwest, a few Christian tribes on the Syrian border, and in the extreme southwest, and a few individuals known as Hanifs, who held a monotheistic faith. The whole population of Arabia worshipped idols, stars, stones, and fetishes. The idolatry of his people, and their immorality, and the terrible treatment of the poor and the weak set Muhammad's mind and soul aflame with intense horror and righteous disgust. In the solitude of the desert and hills, where he tended his sheep, Muhammad reflected on all these questions. He had now reached the age of 21 and had conducted himself with such a rectitude and nobility of character that he was called Al Amin, or the Trusty. The war of the Fajar, which was started by the murder of a member of the Hawazin tribe and lasted for 4 years, made the leaders of the Meccans reflect on the dire results which lawlessness had brought upon them. Muhammad and the other leading members of his clan, Bani Hashim, and their relations, Bani Al Muttalib, and the leaders of the clans of Bani Zuhra and Bani Taym, formed themselves into a league pledged to defend the weak and champion the oppressed, freeman and slave alike, and to vindicate their rights against tyranny and aggression. This league, known as Health al-Fudul, exercised such efficient protection that for a long time the mere threat of its intervention was sufficient to repress lawlessness and afford redress to the helpless. Muhammad was very proud of his membership in this chivalrous league, and used to say, "I would not have the riches of the earth in exchange for my membership of it." Muhammad was content with his lot as a shepherd, but his uncle Abu Talib desired something better for him, and obtained him employment with a rich widow, Khadijah, the daughter of Khuwaylid, son of Asad, and thus Muhammad found himself at the age of 25 in charge of a caravan conveying merchandise to Syria. On Muhammad's return, Khadijah was so pleased with his successful management of her business and was so attracted by his nobility of character, reports about which she heard from her old servant who had accompanied him, that she sent her sister to offer the young man her hand. Muhammad had felt drawn to Khadija, and so matters were soon arranged, though Khadija was by 15 years his senior. Their 26 years of married life were singularly happy. Muhammad continued to work as a merchant, and his fair dealings further enhanced his reputation as Al Amin, the trustee. In the year 605 of the Christian era, a dispute arose during the reconstruction of the Kaaba, which threatened to plunge the different clans of the Quraysh into war, but the sagacious arbitration of Muhammad saved the situation and settled the dispute to everyone's satisfaction. He continued to take an ever-increasing interest in public affairs and to exert himself in the service of the poor, the helpless, and the weak. Many were the slaves who owed their freedom to Muhammad, and many were the widows and orphans who lived on his generosity. When Khadija made a gift to him of a slave called Zayd, who had been presented to her by her nephew, he immediately set the slave lad free. Though he was now a free man, Zayd insisted on remaining in Muhammad's household as his personal servant, and Muhammad rewarded his devotion by adopting him as his son. Virtual adoption, not quite. That's a different issue for elsewhere.